Right, hello everyone. Welcome to episode 12 of Down the Pub podcast, the podcast where we end up talking about all the political things you would end up talking about at a pub after every other interesting topic has been done to death. Tonight, I am once again joined by editor of the Wolves of Westminster, Patrick. Hello, Patrick.
Good day, sir.
And I should introduce myself. I'm Peter Simpson, host of Down the Pub podcast, and I, of course, contribute to Wolves of Westminster and, of course, run the Haryan Gláeddyv channel, where most of you will be watching this. So, this week, once again, more budget talk, because we've not had enough of that for the last 2 months, but at least we actually know what's in the budget, and we know that there have been spurious claims made by both Starmer and Reeves, though mostly from Starmer. Especially, I think the big one for me, I will say, from Reeves is obviously she froze the thresholds for income tax another 2 years or so, was it? When last year she was saying, I'm not going to freeze them any more than the Tories did, because ultimately it's a tax on working people. And obviously, we're going to tax working people. She said last year, extending the threshold, the freeze will be taxing working people. So they have taxed working people, according to her own words, but obviously they try and avoid that, along with a lot of other things that they probably should mention.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Peter, because I mean, you say we're just finding out about this now, but it turns out that there were things that they were finding out about that they didn't bother to tell us about. Either the Chancellor or the Prime Minister did not bother to tell us that they had in fact been told by the Office for Budget Responsibility, the OBR, that in fact the economic outlook, certainly in terms of tax receipts, was nowhere near as bad as they appeared to have been assuming.
Yeah.
So, I don't. We have to be careful here. We have to be clear. People are saying out there that the Chancellor has lied and that the Prime Minister has lied because he was alleged to have known about it as well. I think it's entirely fair to say that they lied, unless you count lies of omission, in which case, yes, it would seem so. It would seem that they knew that, in fact, the picture they were painting was fictional, was based on certain assumptions that were not backed up by any evidence, and yet they chose to say, right, we have to, because they raised various other taxes in other ways. Oh, we've got to do this because of that. Really? Have you got to do that?
Well,
because it turns out that maybe they don't.
Well, I mean, the specifics of this was the OBR told them in September, I think it was, that you actually have a budget surplus of about 4 billion, and that's projected over to 2030. Which, having any sort of budget surplus is music to my ears. But at first, before the budget, with all the leaks when they were going on, the whole point being made was, we don't have money, we're broke, we need to raise taxes to obviously get to a budget surplus. Or I don't think they ever said budget surplus, but I think it was to balance the books was, I think, the phrase being used, because that's the phrase they always use. And then post all this coming out, they pivoted to, oh well, you want a big overhead, don't you? That's what we were going for. It's like, yeah, but that's not what you were saying 2 weeks ago, is the problem. And on top of that, obviously MPs have complained because you didn't tell Parliament any of this, and then the Cabinet have started to grumble because they weren't told about the budget surplus at all either. So as you say, it's more, they were spinning a story, and they could only spin it by omitting a very, very key detail, that the OBR sent out a letter with consent of the Treasury to say, yeah, but you did have a budget surplus according to our, let's face it, not very good projections, because they don't make good forecasts, and they admit that themselves. But still, that's the rules we base it all off. You have to stick to that. If you did have a surplus, there was kind of no reason to tell anyone, not tell anyone, sorry, unless you wanted to mislead them, which obviously if you mislead the House, well, that's what got Boris Johnson kicked out, and I'd argue what Boris Johnson did was a lot less impactful than this.
But is there not another very good example here? Is Amber Rudd?
Yeah, with the well, she didn't know, did she, with the Windrush scandal?
Well, that's the
Yeah.
point, is that she didn't actually know. And it turns out you can go, or have to go, for misleading the House when you didn't even know you were misleading the House.
Yeah, and this is
Whereas,
true. Whereas they knew.
yes, and
We
that's
know they know.
really what in different times this would have been a resignation matter.
Mhm.
And indeed, the Tories have been calling upon the
Yes.
Chancellor to resign, and also have called upon the Prime
Well,
Minister, if she doesn't, to sack her.
yeah.
You know,
Well, I mean, yeah, this is a resignation matter as well. The head of the OBR resigned.
yes,
It's
quite
so
right.
yeah.
So the person who told them the truth has had to go. Now, is that the mood of governance that we think really is right for this country? Because I don't think it is.
No, there's. I mean, as I say, the OBR sent out that letter. To be clear, the head of the OBR resigned over the early leak of the OBR's reaction document, summary document, I think is a better way to put that, which in no way was the head of the OBR's fault, because that was an admin error. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous from where I'm standing to force him to resign over that, especially when, you know, the months of leaks from the Treasury, which on top of that, now there's an investigation into the Treasury of, oh, you know, Rachel Reeves is asking, how did all these leaks happen? When pretty much everyone thinks it was her, because they weren't even telling the cabinet anything.
Well, the two words that spring to mind for me, Peter, are human and shield.
Yes, quite. And I mean, the problem that the Starmer government have is that they're kind of running out of those. You know, you had Sue Gray going probably over a year ago at this point, and the one that they have left is Morgan McSweeney, who nobody in the cabinet or Labour seem to actually like, but he keeps his job. Why does he keep his job? Because he's effectively what keeps Starmer in his position. And this is all stuff that happened a week ago as well. Even this week, Kemi Badenoch again, very good at PMQs. She's definitely into her own there now. Annoyingly, from a reform perspective, but you know, credit where it's due. Credit where it's due. You know.
No, she was good.
She was, yeah.
What I would say is that it would have been very difficult to be bad.
That's quite true.
At a response to such a budget. We have a budget where, you know, as you say, you know, I mean, lots of budget details, to be fair, are typically leaked beforehand. But, you know, in this case, it then turned into, oh, we knew about this. We were told about this, and we didn't say anything about it. And then we continue to pretend that there's this massive fiscal shortfall that we need to compensate for. Now it turns out that actually they don't. Now, with that said, with the headroom bit, I mean, 4 billion is actually not a lot.
No, it's not. Yeah, which is fair. Yeah,
it is fair, and it's a case of saying, I mean, that literally falls within the margin of error for a budget like this.
Yeah,
so there is an argument,
and that would have been fine if that was what they were saying, but they weren't saying that. So that's the issue there. But I'm more talking as well about Kemi Badenoch's performance this week, because it's 2 weeks in a row it's been quite good, because this week she really was hammering on the fact that they have made claims that are just provably incorrect. I'm trying to avoid using the term liar here, but I think one example was Bridget Phillipson, Education Secretary. You know, she was saying, oh, they've been good at recruiting teachers. They've had more. No, turns out on the Department for Education's own website, they've actually lost 400 in total net since coming into government. Obviously, she was having a go at both Starmer and Reeves for not telling the cabinet about what the OBR had told them, and effectively going about as far as you can in the House without calling them liars. But
yes, for listeners who don't know, the parliamentary convention is that you are not allowed, while actually making a speech in the House, to question the honour of another honourable member. You see, that is the official convention.
Yes.
You cannot question their honor, which is, and the way that is interpreted to normal people is, you can't.
Don't call them a liar.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Yes.
But you can say all manner of things that do essentially say the same thing, as long as you know how to use your words properly. Or rather, your speechwriter, who's
I was
probably
going to
about
say
21.
this is why they all have speechwriters.
No, of course they do. And usually about 21, but there we are. So,
Well, they're very good 21-year-olds. Well, Chemis are anyway.
well, they do a good job. But the thing is, she is good on performance as well. I would say she's good at delivery. Delivery is
Yes.
probably the way. If this was Hollywood and not Westminster, and to be quite honest, there's not much
What's
of a
the
difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be talking about delivery. It would be the acting term that you would use, and her delivery was very good in response to this budget. With that said, we end up with what the further consequences of the budget are. And what do we see? We see
classic. It's a classic Labour budget. Tax and spend. Even my sister, who typically, whenever it gets onto politics, it's, I don't really know what I'm talking about. I basically just listen to what other people have to say. Even she had an opinion on this because she works in HR, so has had to pay attention to it. And even she understands she doesn't really watch or listen to the news too much, but even she understands this is not a budget for aspirational people. And I've said it over and over. Pretty much everyone I know my age has a backup plan to leave the country. You don't want your 30-year-olds doing that because typically they're about to move into higher tax brackets. So
well, and indeed they have just moved quite a lot of people into higher tax brackets.
Very, very droll. Yes.
Well, they have.
They have, yeah.
And these are the stealth taxes that people sort of find difficult to talk about because it is very intricate when you get into the level of detail. But what you have to do, what I would encourage everyone to do, is listening to this, is to look at your pay packet from, because to be fair, it's been announced in November. It doesn't come into force until April, I think. But give it 6 months and then look at your pay packet and see how that's changed. Let's see how it's changed. And then you can look back at this and say, oh, it's because of that. Now, interestingly, then the budget changes, the financial changes that come into force in April. What happens the next month? Local elections.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a very good point.
You see?
Yeah, but that,
right?
I suppose Labour's pushback on that will be, but think of the 2-child benefit cap, which is so funny to me because that's an unpopular policy to remove it. So,
well, okay, so that is a very interesting one. And it's a very good point that we should make, because now, so we have the 2-child benefit cap. Now, those who might be critical of that, and there has been stuff on the telly in the past week also talking about that. I mean, one can make an argument, I think, to say, well, why is it 2? Why is it not 1, which would be a bit China-esque? Why is it, and why is it not 3? Why is it not 4? Why is it 2?
Yeah.
And what it reminds me of is, and I think it's about 10 years between you and me, Peter, but I don't know if you remember the sitcom in the 90s called 2.4 Children.
No, I don't remember that one, I'm afraid.
Oh, God. Okay,
sorry.
Well, I do. Yeah,
I'm a baby.
No, don't worry about that. Now, the thing is, why was it called 2.4 Children? The reason was, and that was literally the title of the sitcom. I won't go into the plot, because it doesn't matter. But the reason it was called that was because that was the official statistic at the time, that people who had children at all, on average, they had 2.4. And then somebody pointed out, how can you have 2.4 children? You see?
Wow, yeah.
But so this has been in the public consciousness for some time, I will say, that you can have 2.5 or even quite 2.5 kids. So, it almost makes you think it's ridiculous. It makes you think, okay, maybe somebody had watched that when they were growing up and decided that two was enough. Certainly, I won't speak about this because it would take far too long. I have been in and out of siblings.
Mm.
We're talking foster care here.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep. But I mean, personally, I would have, if I were going to have children, I would have two, I think, just so that they've got a sibling.
Yeah.
Because I know what it's like both to have one and not to have one. Let's just say, and we'll leave it there. But whenever I think about this two-child benefit, I just 2.4 children.
That's all you can think of.
Yeah, that's just what comes back to me. But
Yeah.
it does raise the question of if you're going to if you're going to have a limit at all, where do you set it? And like I say, why is it two? Why is it not three? But then to get rid of the whole thing, I mean, I recall a story from, well, I barely recall it, a long time ago, a good few years ago now, where there was a family that had four kids.
Yep.
And this was one of those families that just lived off benefits that they were getting through the child support allowance and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they weren't paying their rent because they couldn't be bothered to work or something like that. And so the bailiffs came along. This was at the point where, so it was already clear their financial situation was not, sustainable. And then they had another kid. So you have another child in an environment that you can't support. And the big story, I think this was in the Sun, but there was a big story of and with footage, I think, of or at least photos of, literally the bailiffs. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen an eviction. It's a forced eviction.
Yeah, there's came up on my TikTok a couple of times, and I did watch through, and it's not very nice.
It's not very nice, and I've had it literally happen in the room that is along the corridor from me, right here where I'm broadcasting from.
Right.
I've seen it happen. It's not fun. And they turned up and they got rid of them. And then this turned into a story that was about, how unreasonable this was. Well, actually, no, it wasn't. You didn't have the financial sustainability to maintain the family that you had. And then you had another kid.
Yeah. What do you expect? Yeah.
Well, what do you expect? And that was, the point of this policy when it was introduced in the first place. Let's be clear. The point of the policy was not to say you can't have more than two kids. Now, this was China at a previous. I don't know if they've got rid of this by now, but there was the one-child policy in China.
I think they got rid of that a few years ago because it was mad, and they have a demographic collapse now. But anyway,
well, true. But at the same time, I think they're also trying to control the population, which I can't blame them for, given the the demographics over there. But nobody is telling you that just because you will not get any further child benefits after two children, that means somehow that you cannot have any more children. It just means you're not going to get any more state benefits for having another child.
Yeah.
And so when we look at why did we put the two-child benefit cap in place in the first place, I would just refer you back to that story I was mentioning.
I mean, this is why it's popular, because people. The type of person who would have kids just for the benefit are the exact type of person who should not be having children, frankly. Which might sound judgmental, but everyone instinctively, I suppose, or knows the vibes of this. Because everyone's heard the stories, everyone's heard the anecdotes. There's, I think Jeremy Kyle, I suppose, as harsh as that might sound, but.
Well, no, but and speaking of that, of course, you were on his show.
I was Peter. I was one of the, as they called it, Jez's jury. However, from what I understand, I mean, obviously, when we had contact from the producers and all that, I was under the impression it was going to be a live show, it'd be out on tour. Because it turns out it's actually a pilot and it might not go out at all. So it's all up in the air now. So if you do want to see me, hopefully it'll be up on Talk. When it is, no doubt I'll be tweeting about it. But that was
or if it's not, you can always rip it. You can always rip it and stick it on your own channel if you want to. But
God, that'll be a hell of a face reveal.
Highlight reel. But just to be clear, so Peter has now graduated into at least a pilot episode of what was supposed to be live but wasn't live. But it is broadcast television, and I think we should all be proud of him for that.
Yeah, I mean, my experience is basically producers will tell you something, and the opposite will end up happening sometimes. Just roll with it. But this is, I guess, my breakthrough to the mainstream, and I might not even be there.
Well, you never know, but at least they've got you on file now. You see that?
Oh, exactly. So
yeah. You know, and if they do decide to actually turn this into a show, then you might get somewhere. I mean, I was supposed to be on that show as well, but then they decided I was to requirements. That's
which was a shame because it was quite fun.
Well, that's the polite way of putting it. Is you know, there we are. So, but anyway, so for everyone's benefit, that is Peter's.
I mean, it's relevant as well because the way the show worked is effectively Jeremy Kyle got on this ex OnlyFans star, I suppose you'll say. That's the polite way of putting it. Who is now living on benefits, including child benefits for her 3 kids. She doesn't know who the dads are, she says, but she was clearly playing up to the camera to rage bait, for lack of a better term. She was open about having a 4th. One of my questions to her was, "Where are your savings?" To which she said, "Oh, I bought my council house and bought and paid for an extension." Which, by the way, I don't think a lot of people will necessarily know this. Extensions these days are very expensive. Some of my friends own a house in London. They wanted to extend their kitchen 1 story by 5 feet, and it would have cost nearly £100,000. So, you know.
Well, you know what I find funny about it, about extensions, is you go to a sort of rather posh, sort of like middle class dinner party or whatever, and you'll have this terribly posh couple who's there going, "Oh, we're building an extension, you know."
Yeah, it's very very monkey dust.
Like, no. But my point is, no, you're not. You are paying someone else to build you that extension. You are not building that extension.
Yeah,
they feel better. All of that work yourself. You are not doing that. But it's very push to say, "Oh, we're building an extension." No, you're not.
So it's
you're paying someone else to build it for you. So anyway.
Yes.
But go on.
I mean, I was going to say, but quite the you know, the 2-child benefit cap, obviously there for a reason. It's not even necessarily particularly popular. But and we may as well mention the reason of why Labour got rid of the cap. It was so that Starmer didn't get kicked out this week. To peace
we have this issue, and I think we've touched on this topic before, but the rather more generic issue. The problem with having such a massive majority is you've got too many backbenchers.
Yeah, you can't have too big a majority, as it turns out. Boris Johnson found this out.
So he did, and this one is, of course, even bigger than that one. And so you have too many backbenchers, all of whom have too many, well, just the right number, but because you have too many backbenchers, you've got too many constituents who'll whinge about this. Now, that's on the one side of politics. On the other side of the coin, you have people, particularly usually based in the southeast, who are the NIMBYs, and no, I don't want things being built in my backyard.
My nemesis, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. My point being, you can find this on both sides of the coin.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But what Starmer is now finding is that it's not easy to get your own party in line with what you want to do with the governmental agenda. Now, when we think about, so let's talk about 10 years ago, 2015 election, Miliband booted out. Well, not booted out, but didn't win that election. And the Tories got in after 5 years of coalition. But they actually only had a majority of 12, I think it was.
Yeah, it was small.
It's very small, and it's another word for that in the slightly less polite language is bugger all. So yes, you've got one, but it wouldn't take much of a backbench rebellion to find the government plan defeated. And once you have that happen too many times, you can then face a confidence vote.
Yeah,
There's
there's a
either way
Goldilocks
around.
zone, isn't there? There's got to be a
Well, yeah,
Goldilocks zone.
there is.
Yeah.
There is, and I think when Boris got in 2019, that was kind of the Goldilocks zone. It's definitely a decent enough majority, but it's not too much of a big one, and it's not too much of a small one. So,
yeah,
there we are. There we are. Now, speaking of other government plans that are not going so well at the moment, we have the Workers' Rights Bill, which has been defeated in the Lords. Those pesky old Lords.
Thank God for the House of Lords. That's what I always say.
Well, and what were you saying just to me before, just off air, as to what the government response is to?
Well, so you get a new. So obviously, Starmer has a wealth of choice in the New Year's honours list. I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but I believe Labour are getting 26, I want to say. Don't quote me on this because I'm doing it from memory. Weirdly, the official opposition is only getting 6, whereas the Lib Dems are getting about 9 or something like that. They're getting more than the official opposition. Now, the reason that I'm hearing through the rumour mill, which is also known as Times Radio, they reckon the reason for that is because effectively there's a bit of a Lib Dem Labour handshake that will give you a few more lords. You help us get the Employment's Right bill through. Obviously, Reform got absolutely none, 0, zilch, which obviously Farage is very unhappy with, especially since there's obviously jiggery pokery going around with this New Year's honours list. A few of them actually were Labour MP candidates who didn't quite make it. A lot like what's she called, Thangam Debonair. She was supposed to be in a safe seat and ended up losing, so they just made her a lord. So same thing's happening here, which is very annoying because there's a lot of benefit to being a lord, but that's only if you turn up. Which these people should do to vote on this.
I'll just come in on that one. So I mean, it's not like it hasn't happened before. I mean,
yeah,
Lord Randallson.
Yeah.
You know, so he had to resign 3 times, or something like twice or 3 times, something like that. And then, how did they bring him back in the end?
Lord.
Because Blair wanted him around Parliament, wanted him around the cabinet table, just turned him into a lord. And indeed, you know, so that's Labour. But let's look at the Tories.
Yeah.
What did they do with Nicky Morgan? Ennobled her and stuck her back in for a bit. And even Rishi ennobling the now Lord Cameron,
the Foreign Secretary,
and then making him Foreign Secretary, which meant he couldn't actually answer questions in the Commons because you can't if you're in the Lords, so he had to have a deputy to do that. You know, basically what the leaders will do is they will say, okay, these are the people I want around my table. I need them around my table without that rather pesky business of actually having to get elected, you see? So it's not like the main 2 parties don't do this. They certainly do.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it's part of the game, yeah.
And I know you're on the Reform end, Peter, but what I would say is look at what Nigel Farage has already said.
Oh yeah, no, he's quite open. He wants to stuff it, more or less.
No, I don't mean that. Right. I mean, we said about the cabinet. The cabinet that he leads.
Yeah.
As far as he's concerned, now what the hell he would have to do to the Constitution? I was there at this press conference, by the way. You know, I heard his voice. I watched his lips move. This is exactly what he said. You know that, in fact, you know he would not necessarily expect to have a cabinet formed of elected members. You see, that what he would then do is say, look, I mean, I get it. You know, he thinks we need more business people and fewer people who have to worry about knocking on doors and that kind of thing, because some people are suited to one and the other, and other people are suited to the other. And there's a what's it called when you have 2 spheres, isn't it?
Yeah, the Venn diagram. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Venn diagram. You know, there is a Venn diagram in which you get some people who are suited to both, but actually it's quite small, and that's what he seems to think. And what he's saying is, I don't even think anyone in my cabinet necessarily needs. You know, I will appoint a business secretary from business if I want to. They don't necessarily need to be democratically accountable. Now, there is an area in which he is not wrong on that score, because
Go on.
I tend to find the trouble with people who want power is that their primary skill set is in getting elected.
Hmm.
Their secondary skill set is in getting re-elected.
Yes.
Their tertiary skill set, if you're bloody lucky, might just happen to involve being of some actual use once elected. Now, I've said that for a long time.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean all politicians are useless. It just means, as you were saying just then, the Venn diagram is sadly the middle zone is a bit.
It's very thin.
Some scarcity, some scarcity.
Mm.
So, so to a businessman like Nigel, the obvious solution is, well, just sod that, you know. But of course, it's a very radical proposal. To say, we're going to completely abandon the convention of saying that members of the cabinet actually have to be elected democratically accountable people.
Mm.
He only really wants them to be accountable to him. But when you're dealing with a crisis situation, which we sort of are and have been for some time, whether that is migration, whether it is
Economy,
the
yeah.
financial, and he's going, look, I mean, it is very US style. I will say that kind of more like a presidential system, right? Marco Rubio, the Secretary of States, United States, has been appointed by Donald Trump. He has not been the president. He has not been elected as such. He's been appointed, which is the same way we do it in the Lords.
Mm.
And I wrote a paper on this once that was to do with the difference between people being elected, because yes, all right, you have the democratic accountability, it's fine, but that can end up having a certain degree of consequence, particularly in the realms of the conscience, as to how you will behave, right? And things you will support and then maybe not support because the party would. Whereas if you're appointed, no, you're not democratically accountable. Well, that also means you don't have to worry about that.
True. Yeah. I suppose that's the thing. There is. I mean, my argument would be there's still some democratic. I mean, presidents are democratically accountable. It's just they're accountable every 4 years. But it's the same with parliaments, and it's even the same with ministers. Anyway, if you don't, I understand the issues with turning parliament into a bit more of a presidential style system. But having said that, even after 5 years, if Farage tries this experiment and it goes horrifically wrong, well, it's up to people to vote elsewhere. And at that point, it could even be reform again for all we know if it goes badly. But it might go green, or you get the two-party system back with Tories and Labour. Who knows?
Well, that's the thing. Because sometimes you just have a moment in politics, or you might call it a phase, where it's like when you're raising teenagers. Honestly, they're going through this phase right now, this phase right now, this phase right now, and are we going to end up with British politics going through a reform phase? But it's actually just a phase, and then we get back to normality or some semblance.
Well, I mean, I wonder how many people said that about Labour back in 1912.
Well, of course, and the Liberals, as well.
Yeah,
they did. So we just don't know exactly what's going to happen. What we do know is, as of today, that the probability thus far is that there will be a reform-led administration, at least. And possibly what they will do is repeal things like the Workers' Rights Bill that's going through Parliament at the moment.
You'd hope eventually for a some sort of, well, they were supposed to have that Brexit bonfire, but that never really happened. I actually found out why that never happened. This is from an ex-minister who came to a reform branch recently. But effectively, apparently when I can't remember what the bill was called, but effectively it was supposed to be the Brexit bonfire bill. When it was going through, the assumption was the bill was written in such a way that anything not mentioned in the bill gets effectively burned off, it's repealed. It was eventually changed to say anything not mentioned in the bill, actually we're assuming we're keeping. So it's a case of hopefully reform as we say, have a big Great Repeal Bill. It was not unprecedented either. We had a Great Repeal Bill in the 1800s, a couple of them actually, because obviously so many laws that just weren't applicable to Britain were still on the books and didn't need to be. And the
And there
same
were
thing
other
will be
kinds
here.
of repeal around the same time. I mean, the Corn Laws.
Yeah, yeah,
It was
yeah.
only a couple of years before that one. That was or after one of those.
Mm.
But there were times when major changes have been made. We have shown that in the legislative chamber we are able to make major changes. Now, not the last time I interviewed Nigel Farage, but the time before, I only had time for one question, so I asked him, Prime Minister, what are you doing on day one?
Yeah.
And he said, introducing a bill to repeal the Human Rights Act of 1998. So that's an interesting one because, I mean, if you want to have a great repeal bill, there's obviously a lot more that needs to be done. But I found it journalistically interesting, as I think most people would. So that's where he wants to start. You see, there's the hint that you either that's the most important one in his mind, or it's not necessarily more important than anything else, but you have to start there. You see? But that was his immediate answer. This was a very brief interview, but that was his immediate answer. What I'm going to do on if I'm asked what I'm going to do on day one, is I'm going to begin the legislative process, because it doesn't happen tomorrow, of repealing the Human Rights Act of 1998.
Yeah, which is what it then always makes me laugh with the very online right, when obviously this all came from Musk saying, "Oh, Farage doesn't have what it takes." I mean, that answer alone shows me, one, he understands a lot of what our deep-rooted problems are. A lot of it is rooted in Blairism, and that Human Rights Act is, say, why a lot of illegal migrants can stay in the country. And he knows that straight away. That was his straight answer. He knows what his target is.
Yeah,
Good.
he does. He does. He does. And as I say, I offered this information from somebody who was literally there in the room to listeners, because that is literally, I asked him a straight question. It was an immediate, straight answer. And of course, what that also does is it provides you with a view of a trajectory there, doesn't it? Because if you start with that, then you have the next question. Had I had more time, which I didn't, but had I had more time, it would have been, so in what order? Because the other components that you need to disassemble are the ECHR membership.
Yeah.
There's also the Equality Act of 2010.
Yeah.
And then there are a few more things, but the reality is, so in what order do you do this? And had I had more time, as I say, that it would be like, okay, because you could have derived quite a lot of information as to the exact order, without interrogating him too much. In more cases, saying as the exact order in which you would do these things. That tells you things about priorities. Also tells you things about the structure of, if you want to dismantle the Blairite structure, how do you go about doing it? In what order says an awful lot about it. As I didn't get the chance, but we do know, apparently, step one.
So that's kind of the that's the main, or at least step one of effectively what you wanted to ask was, what's this Great Repeal Bill going to look like then? To which I'm sure the answer would be, you're going to have to wait for the press conference in a year.
And then see if you get allowed to ask a question again. But anyway.
Well, there you go. Anyway, but I mean, obviously, I brought up immigration. Then there's another thing I want to talk about, because obviously we started effectively bashing Labour. I actually want to give a bit of credit to who I think is the only good minister that they have, which is Mike Tapp, who is Under Secretary for Citizens and Citizenship and Migration, or Immigration, whatever. Because he was on an interview with GB News recently, effectively being asked what's the plan for the department, to which he said, and I'm not even joking about this because I was quite surprised at the way he phrased it, they're going to be looking at the link between ethnicity, race, culture to child rape. The reason I find that quite surprising is I'm surprised you put race in there. Ethnicity and culture, usually you can get away with that, because obviously that's not necessarily a genetic component, whereas obviously race is. But still they are looking at it. And the obvious reason for that is because effectively Baroness Casey has said to them, this is what you need to do, because so many girls have not faced justice, and this is part of the reason. Plus, there's a load of denial about it, and you actually need to look into it to, either prove the deniers wrong or right, because we don't actually know yet. But what happened when he did this interview and it got onto Twitter? A lot of lefties, Owen Jones, Zach Polanski, Femi, I can't remember his last name, but the Ramona, I suppose, activist, started saying, wow, this is just racism. What the F's going on? This is a Labour politician saying this, to which obviously I was nothing short of impressed, as to be honest I have been with Mike Tapp. So it goes to show that no matter what the experts say, the left are still very selective on what experts you should listen to, because ultimately all Mike Tapp did was say, we're following what the Casey recommendations were, and the left lost their mind, which they were told to stop doing. So
yeah, I mean, so it can be problematic mentioning things like race. Now, somebody that we've spoken about before, or you've certainly spoken about before, got into trouble on GB News for referring to genetics. With the mistake that he made was he was answering the wrong question, which is not the first time he's done that. Really, this is a question of culture. And I think that's the important thing for people to consider when it comes to this kind of thing. Rather than looking at where somebody comes from or what their skin color is or all that, we need to be looking at the culture that they're bringing with them. And I'm talking about immigrants here, so we need to be looking at that. I don't know about you, although I'm sure this is true as well, that I have met some absolutely fantastic people who were not born in this country, right?
Oh yeah.
But who have assimilated into its culture and maybe have brought the best of theirs with them that is not incompatible with ours. Now, indeed, usually on this podcast, as we gather, our third member, he is apparently he's very ill, and so he's not coming. Yeah, but well, we've all been there, mate. But at the end of the day, so he is Polish and came here to this country with his family when he was 8. Now, if you listen to this is what I said before about the Northern Lads podcast. It was my other alternative, if you remember, for the title of this podcast.
Instead of get drunk and record.
Well, yeah. But the point being, if you listen to him, he is fluent in English, and all you'll hear in his accent is Stoke.
Yeah, I think people. I was. You actually told me this story before I actually met him, and when I did meet him, and I'm sure people who are listening will be surprised at this story as well. But it's like, oh, you're right. I've never heard him speak Polish.
I have, and he has a weird Polish accent, and Polish is not one of my languages, but as a general European linguist, I get flavors in lots of ways. I've got smatterings of lots of different things. And I said to him, it was the first time I met him, I said, where are you from? In Poland, I mean. This is once the Polish bit has come out. I said, where are you from? And he goes, I'm from there quite far to the east. You see?
Right, yeah.
And even though it's not a language I have command of, I can still hear the subtle differences in accent and dialect. It's the same in Dutch. So Dutch, which I do have command of, when you go very far to the east, just before the German border, you will hear an accent that is, well, it's quite similar to what we would say in the very southwest. Here's all the farmers' dialect.
Right.
You see? So in east of the Netherlands, they sound to the rest of the Netherlands like farmers, as in, if you go down to, Devon or somewhere like that, or I can get it done by Thursday, then I've got to take the number 1 bus to go and see Mumford and Sons in the village. That's how they sound, you see. And I could tell something about what Simon spoke to. I was checking the Polish thing, and then he spoke to me in Polish, which I didn't actually understand, although I could tell it was Polish. And I said to him, where are you from? Because that doesn't sound like most Polish I know. And I know a few of them. And then he said, But here's a good example is the point of actually the fact that you can.
Integration can happen.
Yes,
It's
and
difficult, but it can happen.
yes, and of course those the Polish people are also white. But even if they weren't, um, let's take Simon and make him black. Oh God, I can probably ask AI to do that. But, yeah, seriously. But my point is that is not what is important. The important
No.
thing is the culture and the willingness for integration.
Yeah, well, it's why I was so surprised at with Mike Tapp. Why did he? It's unusual for anyone on the right in the Tories, let alone Reform, to even start talking about race. And I mean, Jenrick got in quite a lot of trouble for saying that he didn't see a single white face in Handsworth in Birmingham, or near Birmingham, I should say. And that was a secret recording, of course. Mike Tapp says we're going to look into race, and that's acceptable. And I'm just trying to work out why he added race to that, because I don't think that's actually meant. I don't think race is at all mentioned in the Casey report. I think it's just ethnicity, which a lot of people is the same thing, which I disagree with. But anyway,
yes, I agree with your disagreement. But which is rather boring for the audience, but never mind. But in fairness, do you think maybe it's a genuine question? Do you think maybe he's just pressing buttons to see what happens if he does that, and to see if they can drag back some more voters from other areas of the political spectrum? Because sometimes people do this.
oh, it's triangulation. Yeah, I think it's right. I think they're going. I think Mike Tapp said further than what he needed to, because it's annoyed everyone who's part of the Green Party anyway, or your party. In Jones's case, though he might go Green, and everyone else. What do I think? Yeah, I think what he said's perfectly fine and good, and this does need to be looked into, because we need to know what the links are. And it could be a correlation. The causation could be quite different. We all have suspicions of what the causation is, though, especially given that this week we had 3 separate stories of Afghanistanis being convicted for heinous crimes against underage girls. Of all weeks to have this interview and say that, and to have outrage about him saying that, you couldn't have picked a worse week. Because this is not even, the grooming gangs, which are predominantly Pakistanis. This is now Afghanistanis, who obviously a load have either come over illegally and got asylum. One got asylum after saying I don't know to every question from the Home Office somehow, or they were brought over in secret by the Tory and then Labour government because some idiot in the MOD sent a list of names to the Taliban. Which in and of itself is another scandal that seems to not be touched upon as much as I'd like it to when it comes to this conversation.
Speaking of lists, I'll tell you who I think my prediction would be if we're going to start grouping people again. It's going to be Eritreans.
Yeah. Well, that was the one who I nearly said escaped. He didn't escape. He was let out by accident, but he was an Eritrean. Yeah. But I mean, this is how incompetent the government is. For decades, it was Pakistani grooming gangs. Now it's, frankly, Afghanistanis are in the news quite a lot. And I should say, it's probably going to be Eritreans. How have you got 3 separate nationalities to cause pretty much the same scandal, though a little bit different, because the grooming gangs were highly organised. The Afghanistani stories are definitely not. But yeah, it's an odd one.
It is an odd one because it's one of those. Injury is a cultural thing. And they will typically target white girls because being both white and girls, they are viewed as inferior and as objects. And I clearly do not ascribe this tendency to anyone in particular who is from that country. But sadly, we are seeing a tendency, and it's a tendency that after a while, the criticism of this argument is, well, you can't just say that because one of them's done this, they all do this. But at the end of the day, it's like with anything else. Eventually, people are going to notice that there are certain proclivic.
I mean, it's that argument that always annoys me. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows that there is a difference between making a group generalization and individuals of that group not being part of that.
But the best way to... The trouble is, if you challenge that element of their worldview, the entirety of the rest of it collapses.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. I know. I've been on
And
Twitter
that's
enough.
why they can't accept it. They can't accept something that's blatantly staring them in the face, because these people are not, and in all fairness, actually stupid. Usually, well, some of them are, but usually not. It's more people who just it's the house of cards.
Yeah.
It's a house built upon the sand. You butter up the foundations, and then what you find is that the whole rest of the thing has collapsed. And somewhere inside themselves, they do actually know that. And that's why they won't accept what's staring in the face. You see? Now, also, in terms of people like that, you mentioned your party
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so they've had their inaugural conference.
How'd
And
that
the
go?
real far, well, if that's what you can call it, but the real far lefties were
Yeah.
very, very, very annoyed by it because, of the complete disorganization, but also basically the fact that they weren't allowed to take control of it. Now, this is if
Yeah.
you see what I'm seriously, what
No.
they call now, I've dealt with this a lot. What they call democracy means we want to be in charge.
Yep.
Okay, this is entryism,
Hmm.
and it is classic far left. But this is the point when you have people who basically just want to be in charge, but want to make it look like something else. This is what you end up with. Um, and they've been waiting for ages for somebody to create a party because that's what they've been trying to do for years. Now somebody has, and now they're a bit, you know, brassed
Annoyed.
off.
Yeah.
Yes, by the fact that they're not actually in charge, because apparently it was regimented pretty toughly,
Oh,
which is good.
yeah.
Gone.
They got really annoyed about the Socialist Workers Party because you have the most basic rule in a political party of you can only be a member of this party. A load of open SWP members went in, were told no. And yeah, they threw their toys out the pram, and what's it called? Sarah Sultana skipped the boycott of the first day because it's like, oh, we're trying to make a coalition here. No, you're not. You're trying to make a party.
Yeah. See,
Yeah.
it's like with so the stuff we were talking about before. Certain groups of minorities saying we want equality. No, you don't. You want dominance.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not seeking to be measured the same as everyone else. You're seeking dominance, and all humans do this. In all fairness, this is human nature. We seek
Yeah.
control. So it's not exactly like it's surprising, but when you can see it staring you straight in the face. The other thing with the left, there in particular, is that they're inherently opposed to any form of authority. So what they've been trying to do, no, they are. So what
No, it's just very funny because they
it is
are
very funny because
authoritarians.
yeah, because now they're all slating Corbyn. Now, a
He's
couple of years ago,
he's
they'd
not
have been in.
anti-Zionist enough, I think was the line.
That was one of them. There were more, but my point is that
Yeah,
a
go
couple
on.
of years ago,
Yeah.
they'd have been in full-throated support of someone like him, certainly over Starmer.
Oh yeah.
For
Yeah.
example, I don't know if you know what they call the term they have for Starmer's acolytes and his general supporters.
It's, Starmersy or something.
Stormtroopers.
Oh yeah, that was it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There we go. So they should be an awful lot more favourable to him than they certainly used to be. But now you've got somebody, he's trying to do his own thing and be in charge of something vaguely. They will just oppose any form of authority at all. Unless they get to have a democratic vote on absolutely everything that gets decided and run by anything at all, they will oppose it because that is fundamentally leftist
Yeah.
as a mentality. They just don't like anybody having any kind of authority. It's very Marxist. But,
Well, you say this, and then look at the Greens. They finally stopped doing co-leadership with Zach Polanski. They have a
yeah.
leader, and actually, it's grown since then. And in fact, a lot of people who were at your party conference were actually Green members who or if they weren't, they were quite like Zach Polanski, if not outright prefer him.
just quickly on that one, because we talked about dual party membership before.
Yeah.
I mean, you go back 6 years or so when it was the Brexit Party,
Yeah.
and then you have people like Lucy Harris and Lance Foreman and that sort of thing who were Tories.
Yeah.
And Richard Tice, I think.
Yeah. I think even Ben Habib was as well. Yeah.
There were about 4 of them. The Tories did not suspend their membership because the Brexit Party was now a thing, just as your party is now a thing. And in fact, they were not just members; they were elected.
In the
for something else.
Yeah.
The Tories did not suspend anybody who joined the artist formerly known as the Brexit Party because they knew if they did, they wouldn't get them back again, and then they wouldn't have enough, money. Basically.
Yeah.
So I mean, and then I don't know if you remember, there was the big moment of redefection, just like people call remigration. People like certain people we talked about before. Yeah, when and the 4 of them, it was Lucy, it was Lance,
Rees-Mogg's sister.
Oh yes, yes, and someone else. They all came back just in the run up to the 2019 election to sort of persuade people that actually you need to vote Conservative if you want
to be.
My point is, they tolerated that, and so there have been parties that have tolerated people being members of other parties, even though they officially don't. And I mean, Simon even he's both a member of Conservatives and Reform.
Well, that's dropped him in it, hasn't it?
Well, it has. But the reality is, it doesn't matter because one, the Conservatives aren't going to get away, aren't going to get rid of him.
Yeah.
And Reform honestly doesn't care. I mean, they really don't. They don't. The pricing structure that they have is what, 25 quid a year, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
But if you're a young member, it's a tenner a year.
And they don't check.
And they don't check your age. They don't even ask for your date of birth. I'm 39 and I could sign up to that tonight and pay £10 and I'd be officially a young member of Reform.
Oh, you can join Students for Reform. Yeah.
Right, and the Conservatives. But my point is, this is the point. That actually, with that said, though, I was chucked out of Labour. A lot of people who watch me or listen to me probably don't know this, but I'm ex-Labour. I joined the Labour Party. In fact, I joined the Labour Party 10 years ago in 2015, 1 hour after Jeremy Corbyn was elected as leader.
Good God.
I
know so many people like that as well. I was at uni. Everyone I knew was a Corbyn fan. So
I see. It's cool going on the journey, mate. But my point being, they at least did bother to chase. So I joined them, and then after conference 2018, the scales fell from my eyes when my own MP called for a general strike, and I saw what these people actually were and what they were about.
Yeah.
So I left them.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't notice. They were a branch show and said, I'm off. I'm not in this. And then they continued to send me their branch meeting minutes, which I duly forwarded on to the local Tory PPC, which was very, very funny. And I don't mind talking about this because it's sheer incompetence and it's not mine, it's theirs.
Yeah.
And that went on for about 6 months. And then I stood as a Tory councillor candidate, and then they noticed. And then they got rid of me.
Yeah, then they got you.
So technically, I was, even though I had stated my intention, because basically I stopped my subs, and then I got a letter saying, you've cancelled your subs. Yes.
Yes.
And then I got another letter saying, well, maybe you're just a bit hard up. You could pay a bit less. And I was like, no, I'm earning 40 grand a year. I'm just not giving it to you prize twats. But
I'll bleep that.
It's actually very difficult to leave a political party. You see, I don't know how you would leave Reform.
I am still getting. I'm still on the mailing list for the old branch of the Tory party where I used to live. I still get, they want to build on the green belt. We'll stop that. Why are you telling me I live in Wales? You know I live in Wales. I told you I live in Wales. But there we go.
They're all useless, mate. Seriously, they are. When it comes to that kind of thing.
Oh, it's yeah. I've been through them. I mean, I went Liberal to UKIP to I think I went Tory after that, and then yeah, now I'm Reform, and no, but like, I just cancelled the direct debit. I never even got a. Are you sure you want to leave? Certainly from UKIP and Liberal Party, which didn't do anything as far as I remember.
So my local Labour branch didn't notice, but the Central Party eventually did notice, and I got the letters, and then eventually I got kicked out because I was standing as a Tory, which, in fairness to them, is perfectly understandable.
Yeah, that's.
But it's like, why did this take you 6 months? You know.
Yeah.
I gather that Reform have an IT administrative place, a position going. Might have a go at that because, like I said, I know how to do this stuff properly, but it's not what typically in political circles. I don't tend to mix with people like me who've got 22 years in IT. You, for that matter, in software development, they just don't tend to mix.
No,
but they should.
Oh yeah. I mean, to be fair, my Reform branch absolutely love me because I bring the average age down at the branch by about 20 years. So,
see, that's funny because go on.
Well, I'm known as the man that can run up hills.
Well, even I was struggling these days.
Yeah.
But no, this is again a certain person who talked about before. Now he was at an event. I think it was a New Culture Forum thing, and was going on about there is this growing contingent of young people who think like me, who think like this. Thing is, I know him. The reality is the Reform voter base is much older. And the only reason he thinks more young people think like him is because there is, in fact, a shrinking contingent of young people who he's willing to hang out with. That's why he thinks more people think like him. But we all, anyone who listens to this channel probably knows who we're talking about.
Oh, they definitely will. Well, if I bring up other people who will remain nameless, but people will know who I'm talking about, as you say. But yeah, another person who's similar to this person you're talking about. He was obviously Reform have recently launched the Christians for Reform section, which they even did a bit of a launch today where it was singing carols and reading scripture, I think it was, or at least psalms or readings or something like that. Which I actually watched a bit of it and I thought this is either going to be really cringe or really nice. And fortunately, I found it really nice. It wasn't too heavy-handed. It was only an hour or so. It was a bit like listening to a mass more than anything, or a carol service, I suppose. But obviously, Tim Montgomery's heading it, to which I may as well name him Connor Tomlinson, because he openly kept going on about this on Twitter. But he seems to think that there's a massive contingency of traditional Catholics who really want to be massively conservative, effectively have Catholic doctrine from the 1700s or something. And it's so alien to my own experience in the Catholic Church, which I have very much been involved with since I was young. I was an altar server. I did Eucharistic ministry, so handed out body and blood of Christ. Even where I've moved to, I go to church there. I've never met anyone like that, unless they went to be a priest. And even they're not that bad.
Well, to me, mate, an old server means it's got a Pentium 2. Oh yes.
I've heard them all.
The first job I did in primary schools was replacing that thing with something that actually worked. But no, I know exactly what you mean. And yes, again, what actually this means is there's a shrinking contingent of people they're associating with, so they therefore think more people think like them. But that's only because they avoid people who don't.
Total echo chamber, it really is.
Well, but certainly in terms of the Catholic side of things, yeah, that's Simon's Catholic.
So he's mentioned. But I mean, I have to say, I'm seeing a bit of a revival. I'm seeing clearly mostly men, but people under 30 coming to the congregation, which is already quite small because I live in a village. But they are coming. Like, there are people moving to it, but they don't. I'm not really, I chat to them a bit, but I'm not really seeing them be the Connor Tomlinson types, for a lack of a better term. And I don't know where he gets the idea that there's a lot of them from. basically I can only come to the conclusion that he doesn't actually go to church that often because the congregation aren't like that at all. They all vote Labour.
Yeah, and to be fair, a lot, there's families that, again, we talked about going on journeys.
Yeah.
I was referring to that in political terms. I mean, my family has been, when we moved up to Cheshire, we were Methodists mainly. And then what happened was that my two parents were sort of split off into their own directions. So my mum went Baptist and my dad went Anglican, including High Anglican. Now, speaking of church, so they would go. They have their own alternate churches. With all that said, though, I mean, I think sometimes you do get a blending of these kinds of things, and then you have the notion of commonality. I think it's called interface going on there. I mean, in terms of churches, some brides actually down in central London, they actually do a Christmas service every year, so that'll be quite soon for all the journo crowd, basically. It's like there's literally a journo Christmas service. I went there with Charlie Downs, about 3 years ago now. So they do that. And then there are other ones that are out there for the Politico crowd. It's interesting, but it's also not really what we're supposed to talk about. So what else are we supposed to talk about?
Well, the last thing I kind of want to bring up is the question time with the question time immigration special, mainly because the only two interesting people and the only reason I can tell anyone watched it was Zach Polanski and Zia Yusuf, because last time they were on it was quite entertaining, and this time around again it was quite entertaining. So Zach Polanski had the absolutely astounding line of effectively saying we need immigrants because at the end of the day, I don't know about you, but I don't want to wipe all people bum. That's for the immigrants to do, is effectively what he said, which is very who's going to make my pret-a-manger in the morning? Donald Trump, who do you expect to clean the toilets if Mexicans don't come here? Basically, there seems to be a very middle-class lefty attitude that because I think jobs are beneath me, they're not for other basically British nationals is the giveaway, and actually it's for immigrants, which I find really funny because 4/5 of care workers are actually British nationals, and despite the Boris wave, only a fifth of care workers are actually migrant workers. So even that analogy doesn't even work. But I also just found it really insulting because I've done voluntary work that involved a bit of care work because obviously, as I said before, I'm a Catholic. I've been to Lourdes, as all good Catholics should. And obviously, if you volunteer, you do a bit of care work there. It's nothing intensive, but it does involve things that are there to try and keep the dignity of the people you're helping to look after and wheel around and things like that. And I just find it really insulting, to be honest, that I really don't like the idea that any job's below anyone. And one way that I really came to that effect is, at uni I was a bit more snobbish, but after, when I was actually stacking shelves in a supermarket, actually I don't think there should be a job below anyone necessarily, and you shouldn't be embarrassed by what job you do. We all need to, make a living at the end of the day. And so, and the audience didn't really seem to react like I would hope them to. But this is a BBC Question Time audience, which we all know what the memes of that are.
Yes, indeed. Well, I mean, look, and just to speak briefly to your point on jobs. I mean, look, Mackies, but that's because I think that's not because I think it's beneath me. It's because I know it'd be bloody useless at it.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So and do you know what? I have all respect for people working retail, like in a supermarket chain. But you go and you say, "Oh, excuse me, do you know where this is?" I couldn't do that. I can't store that much information in one go. So
you'd be shocked when you're stacking shelves for 2 hours before the store opens. You'd be shocked at what you remember.
Well, you see, yeah, but I know I couldn't do that, and then of course they move it all around every couple of weeks.
That's true. So that is
because you thought, you thought you knew where this was, and now it's over there. I couldn't cope with that kind of thing. So now I'm certainly thinking the kind of job is actually beneath me, as long as it's earning me enough money. That's absolutely fine. But yes, to come back to the issue of, I think what you've raised is the notion of class. and the perception of class. And yes, I personally thought the comments that Zach Polanski made, I don't want to wipe someone's right. Well, I mean, okay, so let's start from first principles here. Let's be honest. I don't want to wipe someone's
Nobody.
bum either.
That's why they
You
get
know,
paid for it.
yeah, of course I don't. But
Yeah.
it is very much, as I say, this notion of there's the sort of the almost the servile class.
Well, that surf class, yeah.
Yeah,
Cheap surf
class.
class,
Yeah. So the surf class, as long as you haven't got surfboards, that might come here on one. But I didn't say it. Oh God. But still, this notion that there are jobs. It really does betray or belie, or one of those, the fact. It's very revealing, isn't it? How
it's
these
a
kinds
mask
of
slip.
people, yeah, it's how these
That's what
kinds
it
of
is.
people actually think, and how they therefore think about their fellow citizen, both national and foreign born. And it's the sort of thing. Can you imagine if Tory had said that?
Well, God, Nigel Farage, Rees Mogg. I couldn't imagine Rees Mogg saying it. I don't know, Mark Francois.
He won't like that.
Oh, yeah, well, you know what I mean. But no, I totally get it. Which is the funny thing as well, because on that panel, everyone was white British apart from Zia Yusuf, who was the big voice for no immigration, please. Which I have to say again, he did quite well at. He is good when being the attack dog. I mean, the highlight for Zia Yusuf for me was he was. There were a couple of people who came over illegally, but I think are either seeking asylum or have actually claimed it successfully, meaning technically they're not illegal because our laws are mental. But he was basically asked, you've got two people here. One was just reading off a list on his phone. People were saying he had an earpiece as well. That may or may not be true. It's not a very good picture. But just reading off a list of, do you want to get rid of these rights? And he brings up the Northern Ireland Protocol. It's like, sorry, you're an Afghanistani refugee. What do you actually know about the Northern Ireland Protocol? So it's just clear nonsense. And, the other one's got his own sub-story as well. And Zia Yusuf was basically asked, these are real people. This is your policy. Would you deport them? And he just says, absolutely. Which is like, yeah, good.
just to rather cynically, and I must add tongue-in-cheekly, come back to he's the only one who's brown on that panel. Well, he's already here. So when we talk about deporting other people, he doesn't need to worry about it, does he?
Well, even if he was Sri Lankan born, if he came over and got citizenship, he should still stay. The ILR rules wouldn't affect him at that point anyway. The changes that reform one.
That's kind of my point. That's kind of my point.
Yeah, and
he's already here.
Yeah, and the other thing he did as well, which I found quite funny, was obviously the two Afghanistani refugees, asylum seekers, whatever, both men. And Zia Yusuf quite politely called them cowards because he made the point that typically, if you're in a war, if you're in a struggle, whatever, men usually go to the front line, women and children retreat. He said this on the panel with them in the room, which to me was him calling them cowards, which again I found. I'm glad that I have representation on a question time panel for once, I suppose is the way I'd put that.
All I would say to you, regardless of ethnicity or cultural background, I would just say to people, when was the last time you were in armed combat?
Oh, well, fair enough, yeah. It is.
I can tell you exactly the last time I was in armed combat.
Oh, yeah, no, you've mentioned before, it's terrifying.
Monday the 25th of March, 2024.
Yeah.
So, I would say to people, if you don't know how it feels to be wondering whether or not these might actually be the last few minutes of your life, then you don't understand armed combat. When I took up that weapon and went out of that door, I did not know I was coming back through it again. And I know this is, for some people this would be quite hard hitting. Um,
Sure.
it was a blade, by the way, it wasn't a gun. But my point is that, because the other guy had a blade,
Mhm.
so I was fighting fire with fire. But the point, even accidents can happen.
Mm.
You know, but if people don't understand that, then it's difficult really to appraise it um, in a sensible way. So yes, I think what Zia is saying is, look, you guys appear to have sodded off
Mm.
or swanned off, and now you want our protection. What are you doing here?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the thing with Hong Kong. It makes a bit more sense for the men to come as well because Hong
Yeah.
Kong versus the entire Chinese army. Don't know about that one, but with Ukraine, pretty much exclusively women and children were brought over here, and a lot of them want to go back. They even had the whole issue of ones that are here are shocked by how diverse, let's say, areas they've been put in are in London, especially, which is always a very funny article and interviews to go back to. I mean, even I think a woman's even kicked out of a house for being too racist for the host, which they've just fled a war. This would be my thought, but
Well, it's a different culture,
it is. It is.
and
Oh,
and their culture
Mm.
has always been they've had to defend themselves, not just now, since for the past 3 years, but they've had to defend themselves from a lot of different threats, from a lot of different cultures. So, I've said this for a long time. The cultures have long memories. Even the Turks, for example, that's a very good example because of where they are geographically.
Yep.
They've had people streaming through them from either end for thousands of years. So the way that they preserve Hungary, actually, that's another good example. We have a pretty goddamn right wing government in Hungary. Well, we do.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
You have law and justice in Poland. Well, our normal partner for this podcast, he will have, if not parents, then at least grandparents who remember what the Soviet Union was like.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, even it's quite funny. Even here, I mean, just to touch on the Nick Fuentes interview with Piers Morgan, which I did watch out of morbid curiosity, and I think my one sentence review is it was funny, but you're not going to get a lot of useful information out of it. But Danny Finkelstein put a video out basically saying Nick Fuentes likes to joke about liking Stalin and saying Hitler's cool and all that. My grandparents were killed by Hitler. Others were put in gulags by Stalin. Does he still think it's funny? Obviously, Nick Fuentes, being the joker he is like yes, because he has no connection to it really. But obviously, Danny Finkelstein plus his kids, plus possibly his grandkids, are going to hear those stories and take them quite seriously, which is why people in the very online right who are a bit of a fan of Hitler, they do exist. It's why they're never going to get anywhere, because also we still, they're dying off now, but we still have grandparents who lived through the wars, and we've heard all the stories. And also, the Holocaust is the biggest genocide that has ever been recorded. Well, no, there's bigger genocides. It's the most information-heavy genocide that we know of. We know everything there is to know about it, really. So that's going to be hard
Quite
to
so.
subvert. But I mean, anyway, to bring this back round to topics in Britain, illegal migration is still a massive issue, and well, the Greens ignore that. Zia obviously is on Question Time saying, yes, I'm still going to deport them, and I'll even say that to their faces. And they keep causing issues, as we went through the Afghan problem before, and they've even started bringing over heroin, haven't they? Is it heroin?
Well, I think it was definitely at least heroin, and there might have been other things as well. But the idea was for them to swallow. Oh, apparently cocaine as well. Yeah, cocaine and heroin. Yeah, and they get VIP privileges
Oh, nice.
for
Oh,
their
wow.
crossings, as long as they swallow these packets of drugs and deliver them to organised criminal gangs in Britain. This is what the Telegraph is saying. I mean, uh, what it doesn't say, which is perhaps just for polite sensibilities, is
I mean, how do you, you know, are you?
How do you get it? Typically,
Yeah, yeah,
typically it's passed, and
yes.
you
Assuming no comment.
you retrieve it. I mean, yeah, I suppose it's like unblocking a toilet.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, just that then you've got to wait for them to have a cycle, haven't you? So,
well, quite, and I suppose they're happy to. Oh, there's the plastic. Get that out, right? Give it a very, very good wash, and then
yes,
hopefully, anyway. Otherwise, that's going to be pretty bad for the customer. But
it shows the whole devious nature of this process and the way that people are being treated, and also just how goddamn desperate they are to get here. Now, I remember this goes back about 10 years. When these sorts of things, they were not operating at the same scale, but when these sorts of things started to happen, there was a video, there was an interview, it was on the BBC actually, so presumably the editor was off. From some, this is when you had the Calais jungle.
Yeah. They came out with lorries then, didn't they?
They did, and they went over to Calais, the journalists, and they interviewed some of these people, and they were saying, I'm going to have to do a bit of an accent now because it's just how I remember it, but I'm not being judgmental. It's just they were saying, oh, why do you want to come to England? You're already in France, you're safe, that kind of thing. And they were saying, yeah, but if you go to England, they will give you a house.
Yeah. And
I remember that verbatim quote. They'll give you a house, and you couldn't find and all of that kind of thing, and with wide eyes and smiles and full of happiness, really.
Yeah.
They really do think that they're getting a better deal in life, which in reality is probably true. So it's basically a bunch of people trying. I won't call them chances exactly. I know somebody else who does, and we both know that person. Person is
true,
but it's in a sense they are, but it's also just like, I mean, what would you do? If you.
Yeah, I mean, it's well, people do it, don't they? Even if they're British nationals, they get what a lot of people get what they can from the government because it's theirs for the taking. What you kind of a sucker not to. I think as well. Actually, I was watching Sky News earlier today. They did a bit of a bit on illegal migrants, but not the channel migrants. No, we're talking about ones who come over on a student visa. This particular one came over on a student visa, stopped going to uni, and obviously the visa got revoked. He's still in the country though, and he's still in the country because he's doing cash in hand work. £50 a day for 8 hours work or something to help build an extension or something for someone he knows. Not sure where he lives. Not sure how he lives. Sorry, but he does eat from like this soup kitchen type thing. I think it's actually a religious community center. I think it was Indian, so I think it was a Hindu thing. But he comes here to pray and eat, and it's just the thought process of if Sky News can find this out that this guy's illegally here and even where he goes and basically where all his steps for his evening walk are, why can't the police? Why can't Border Force? Because this is the other embarrassment. When in Dover they started filming the boats coming over, what was the authorities' reaction to that? Oh, we're just going to put up a whole load of fencing around it so people can't get to it and record us bringing them in. Everything seems to be done to, help people who aren't British nationals, and you get the odd deportation from this Labour government, sure, but it's nowhere near the level it needs to be, and they don't seem massively eager to expand it too much. They just like saying, yeah, we've had more deported than the Tories, and that's good enough. Great.
Just the secret of agenda, yes, is that people actually don't, that's why we get activist lawyers and activist judges as well. This is being done for ideological reasons.
Yes.
And anyone with more than 4 brain cells to rub together can, in fact, see that. In general terms, though, people, internally, shall we say, do not talk to each other. I mean, I had an issue with my thermostat. And so I reported that to Home Emergency because we had no heating. And I have to say, it's the only time they failed me. I won't say which provider it is, but all right. And so I got a text saying on that day, on that morning, saying, right, we're finding someone. I got another one a few hours later saying it's taking longer than usual to find someone. And then by somewhere close to the evening, I got one saying we're really struggling to find someone. And then on the next day, which is a Tuesday, about only a little after 8 in the morning, I was barely up. Yeah, we can't find anyone. But if you can find someone to do it, we'll cover up to 200 quid. Now, again, what did I do? Because I have a boiler care plan, which wouldn't cover this, so it would be chargeable, but, that's just the annual. So, with British Gas, I just rang on British Gas.
Fair enough.
And so, where's that from? You send someone out, and I got a slot for literally the next day. And they came out, and I've now got a lovely, can't do product placement here. Well, a certain brand of thermostat that you can control remotely, so I can do it on my phone right now. You see, I can even there. I can just boost the heating or whatever, or change the programs if I want.
There's probably no problem with actually doing product placement. Like you can just say who it is. I think I don't. You're not paid. That's the all you have to sell YouTube. So, but anyway,
it's Hive.
There you go.
It is very good. And that because it was discounted because of a failure of the last one, they have discounted plans if you're going through the insurance. So yes, so that was £148.30, which is under 200 quid. So I now had that refunded, and now I can control it from anywhere, and it actually works instead of getting deranged like the last one, because it was on its last legs. That thermostat was about that kind of thing. But my point is, so that's a good story, but at the same time, I'm just like, why could you not find somebody to come out, for the home emergencies? If I can ring up British Gas
and they find someone,
and they'll come the next day, why are you in so much trouble? Most of these engineers are freelancers anyway.
Well, the other funny thing is, we can't find anyone. If you can find someone, it's like, if you can't find someone, why do you think I can find anyone?
Well, exactly, but of course that's exactly what I went and did. But it just reveals the ridiculousness of that.
Yeah, and the same thing obviously happens in police forces and other institutions. Yeah.
And that's the moral story, is that I want people to just don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
It's the same as when I was in the hospital and they came out and said, "Oh, your blood pressure's really low.
Thanks.
So we need to retest you." And I said, "How low is it?" And they said, "Oh, we don't know."
What?
I said, "Why?" I said, "Why don't you know?" And they said, "Oh, that's a different team."
Right.
You're in the same bloody hospital. They'll be down the corridor.
I've mentioned it before, but I know people. I know people who have their own folders with all their medical notes because doctors don't share them. Yeah, it's madness. It's madness. But yeah, I think with that though, we'll leave that episode here. I'd like to thank Hive for sponsoring the podcast. No, I'm joking. But
we've covered a number of topics, haven't we?
Oh yeah, we've covered everything from this week. So with that, we will be back next week. We'll probably have a break over Christmas, but we're not there yet. So we will be back next week. But with that, I would like to thank Patrick for joining me today.
You're very welcome, sir.
And with that, I'd like to thank you all very much for listening. And until next time, goodbye.